Hello, everybody. Scott Golden here with the ICW review, ICW New York review for the of 23rd of February 2001. Again, I'm doing these independent shows because there's a lot of stuff on here that could be fun for people to watch. Also, if you're new and you haven't already subscribed, 1,500 audios, old school, new school, all points in between, independent wrestling now, maybe Japan someday. But we're trying to have the largest and most diverse group of independent or of wrestling that's available. Anyway, so we open up with the USA Pro Tag Team Champions Boogaloo and Damian Dragon basically saying that they should be seen as guys who are a major deal here. Then we've got a relatively, I think his name is, I don't even remember, Harry something or other, in there as a promoter. Again, not plugged well. I'm listening to for the first time his name, Harry Sachs, Harry Sledge. Anyway, he's in there. He's basically acting like a helper to the promoter. Fans at the time probably knew who they were, but basically the idea is the USA Pro Tag Team Champions are here. They've been asked to commentate for the night because they haven't been booked for a match. Why this is taken into account in an actual match format, who knows? Doesn't make any sense to my brain, but it is here. Then we kind of go to, the opening match of the show. Divine, who had been on the show previously, or in the last incarnation of things, Chris Divine versus Sledge is here. And I mean, ultimately, this is not a bad match. How they got 3 hours out of this mess, I have no idea, other than the fact, and I say mess only because there's a couple matches on here that don't belong. Also, I say mess because, again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 matches in a 3 hour show, I guess would be fine if every match had a story that made an abundance of sense. This is not the case here, and so a lot of what you see is disjointed. The wrestling itself is good, so if you're in for matches or you want to see storyline production from certain guys, that's worth checking out. But as far as ultimately being, this amazingly booked promotion, no, not at all. Maybe their current day stuff, and that's actually kind of why I want to do this is to see, how hard is it to book an indie show? Are these things that make sense? And I think, the promoters would probably say something like, and akin to, hey, this is the post ECW 2001, the Chaos booking. Our fans liked it. This is New York. It's different, but at the same time, good booking principles work. Now to be put in my place and to admit my flaws in somewhat narrow mindedness, their shows look to be nearly sold out. So obviously for their crowd, they're working it very well. Anyway, so again, Divine and Sledge opening the show. I mean, ultimately, not a bad match. Divine was here the previous month, and I'm sure is going to be here through the half dozen or so 2001 shows we have available. I believe this is the same day or close to the same day as the Ring of Honor debut. Might have been the day before the Ring of Honor debut, but that same weekend, because I remember it was February 20 something of 2001 that Ring of Honor started, and I think it's 22nd, 23rd. So that same weekend, Divine looks like he put on a little weight since the last time we saw him. Sledge is the manager, managed by a member of the G Mafia, Bobby G, and that's kind of there. Um, you know, Divine kind of talking a little bit about trying to get the crowd behind him. Does not have, in a very short promo, getting heat under himself. Doesn't have a great deal of charisma in that regard. About 15 minutes before we even get the first match into the ring completely. And Sledge doesn't end up coming out. Judas Young does. Why that is not promoted on the listing for the tape and or isn't kind of a thing here is lost to me. There's so many match changes, so many just goofiness there. Um, it's here, it's there, it's everywhere. Judas Young though does give Divine a good match in so much as you know lots of basic wrestling early, lots of kind of the back and forth. Um, it does give Divine a chance to be more of a heel as he actually goes to shake hands with Young and just punches him instead. So the heel aspect of it gets some attempted cheating, and then we see a dive over the top rope by Young. Young manages to get the crowd behind him relatively well. The promo again doing the Punk's not dead thing. You can see he's doing the vinyl pants, trying to be kind of punkish. Goes to the outside with another dive. I honestly believe that he could have been. I wouldn't say a major star, but could have been more than he was. Young goes to the outside, brings the man back in. Divine begs off a bunch, and he does the whole should I kick him, should I punch him kind of thing, which is goofy, but lots of wrestling schools were teaching that at the time. Bulldog attempted roll up into a crotching on the middle post there by adversary, and again Divine he kind of hits the neck breaker, gets going with it, and stays on it for a little bit here. Um, a match that is pretty basic by its nature, but at the same time good for what it is. Northern Light suplex. Divine nearly loses him. Does get him over, but it takes a minute or two, and they have a reasonable back and forth, pretty good psychology match. Although Young's selling is a bit lost. Clash together. They were going for the clashing cross bodies, and they just bumped chests instead. And then you kind of do see Young obviously has the crowd with him a little bit. Um, doesn't get everything. Divine goes to the top rope at a point and hits a frog splash, which was well done, but again a kick out. Why is the guy kicking out of a frog splash in the first match? Why is the referee making as much noise as anybody else in the ring about the non finish? Again, the referee, I'm pretty sure is Todd Pat Pants Sinclair, but I mean, that's there. And again, you go into these independent shows knowing that guys are trying to put forth their best deal, but knowing your place on the show really, really matters, especially in independent shows where, if you got a guy doing a beautiful frog splash in the first match, then when a guy does it in the seventh match, it's not going to matter. And so you kind of gotta tighten that up a little bit. Punches and kicks, something that Young needs to work on here, as his punches and kicks need a little work. Coming back with a drop kick after all that, and then does the come on, get up deal. Also a little goofy upon occasion here, but eventually we see Young hit kind of the rocker dropper. He gets, and then again pulls the man up from the rocker dropper. So just kind of goofy, and then kind of goes into a modified hip toss style attempted finish. Doesn't get all he wants on that, and then Young goes and hits a double underhook DDT attempted, but the cheating by Divine manages to use the feet on the ropes. All that for a feet on the ropes finish. Interesting that you'd give almost 20 minutes to, 15, to a match and then do a feet on the ropes finish as the way to start. Then we go to the next match. A little bit of microphone work from Prince Nana, basically saying he's the best in the world, etc. and so forth. And has a really short match with, in this case, El Gringo is defeated by Prince Nana. Basically hits the clothesline and maybe one or two other moves. Then we see Tom Marquez make his way in. post Nana not really being challenged. Um, Marquez is a guy who did have some ECW fame, thought he was bigger than he actually was. There's an interesting kind of inverted stump puller type maneuver there. Nana asking for a real challenge. Crowd member certainly getting up in his face a little bit. And again, a match sanctioned very quickly without any real explanation for it. Um, you know, obviously this is meant to put Pablo over. Funny spot, botched spot actually, where Nana basically tosses himself over the top rope before Pablo comes at him with a clothesline at all. Double, uh, kind of a double jeopardy kind of suplex. Pablo Marquez manages to, come out a bit ahead here, and eventually gets the victory. We move to, or Nana grabs a bit of some cheating ability, but ends up on the receiving ends of a bridging suplex, and Pablo gets the victory. We move to the next in the series of matches here, which ends up being Abunai and Amazing Red. Decent for the time. Abunai is a independent guy around the, I guess, tri-state area: New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania. Featured by IWC at the time. Red comes in and does, backflip off the ropes before the match even begins, and basically Abunai kind of doing the Hayabusa with a ponytail gimmick if you've never seen him before, wearing regular shoes and red and yellow pants. Another small guy, so he works well with Red. Lots of back and forth with kind of tumbling and then a clothesline to take his head off. Red manages to get struck quite a bit here. They take the match down to a basic headlock at one point. Doesn't last very long. Both guys want to fly, and it makes sense for them to fly because that's their role, not only in the show but in what's there. Red gets a near fall with the guy having the foot on the ropes. Red also comes back with a one-legged drop kick, step up drop kick type maneuver. Referee having some issues with things, and Abunai manages to hit the ropes and hits a basically back jump moonsault. Gets nailed for his trouble. Actually clunks heads with Red, or at least that's what it's made to look like because he's selling like he did. Anyway, this match shows the inexperience of both guys. That being said, for the crowd that's there and the fact that they have been indoctrinated to Red through other independent promotions, poor Abunai, though, manages to try and do kind of the lion salt, but actually almost stumbles off the ropes. Proof that you don't do things you don't know how to do, and you don't need to do 27 high spots in one match. I won't say it's a bad show by any stretch of the imagination, but I will say guys trying to do things they don't need to do just for the sake of spots is a recurrent issue within the promotion, at least at this juncture. Hard shots by Abunai, goes to the top rope and manages to go for the Rana, but Red holds on to the top rope, manages to come up, hits the 630 splash, and gets a victory there. We move on to the next in the matches. Red even looks surprised, which is kind of cool. I mean, to have a guy win a match with a spectacular move and then look momentarily surprised by the win, I think that makes sense. Hey, I actually got him. I got him. It happened. Good for me. Is a lot better than the guys who were like, hey, I just popped up off nothing, and that's that. So then we move to the Hit Squad coming out next. They are in a tag team match, obviously. Hit Squad, New Jersey Hit Squad, whatever you want to call them. The Hit Squad, Monster Mac and Mafia versus Natural Born Killers. I think they end up going with Natural Born Sinners, Boogaloo, and Damian Dragon. I believe they're the USA Pro Tag Team Champions we talked about earlier. Obviously, this match meant to kind of not be a let up, but a little bit stronger style. You just saw high flyers. I will give promoters credit and stylistically some credit here. Uh, you know, Dragon hits a couple of glancing blow drop kicks, doesn't even really hit him with them, which is, especially with a guy as big as either half of the hit squad, not exactly the smartest of maneuvers. Boogaloo comes in, tries to get a couple of advantages, doesn't really get them. Obviously, the size differential hurts the match. Hit squad does go to the outside, and we see uh, Boogaloo and Dragon kind of double teaming members of the hit squad on the outside. A completely non-believable by Boogaloo overhead suplex. And I say it's non-believable just because, I mean, he power lifted a guy who is nearly double his size. And I mean, they are trying to get these guys over as USA Pro Tag Champs because I think they run the same basic area, might even run the same building upon occasion, but um, it's glaring. These guys are a much different size, much different style, and it doesn't really work coming together. Stun gun style maneuver by one half of the hit squad, and the hit squad guys are certainly trying to get the crowd behind them, trying to fire the crowd up a little bit. Hit squad also well known for double team maneuvers, kind of hitting double shoulder tackles, double power presses, and the like, and send the guy up pretty high and keep him going. I mean, from the standpoint of is it booked in a way that crowd will buy, the answer is yes. Although them being as competitive with them doesn't make sense. Hard lariat by the hit squad. Hit squad goes to the outside, manages to get a hit there. Dragon does the majority of the work. Boogaloo comes in, gets thrown on his head with an overhead suplex. Spin kick by Dragon coming back in and does all he can to get things going in a meaningful way. Eventually, Dragon gets knocked nearly unconscious, and the hit squad gets a victory there. It's not matches rough. Certainly good stylistically to switch things up there, and that makes sense. Meanwhile, Joel Gertner had joined the announce team out there and about, and Mike Cruel and Balls Mahoney, the uh, Giadon or Bobby G, is out here. He's complaining about not having competition, complaining about not being respected. He runs things, blah, blah, blah. That leads eventually to the same flannel and jeans clad authority figure. Yes, flannel and jeans authority figure is the combination here. Basically, he calls them soprano ripoffs. Then Balls Mahoney is called out as his friend. This match is worth going out of your way to see. Kid Cruel and Balls Mahoney, probably the best match on the show in nature of storytelling, and a lot of that has to do with Balls. They go back and forth probably for 10-15 minutes, but Balls Mahoney does amazing selling, also does some collegiate style wrestling takedowns and stuff you wouldn't expect from a guy known for hardcore. Those, of course, who follow Smoky Mountain Wrestling and places before Mahoney became known for the hardcore knows that he can bump around and do lots of cool things. But I mean, he hits a couple of hard shots. Cruel manages to do the majority of the selling in the match, but also hangs with Mahoney quite a bit. Actually, eye rakes, punches, kicks, basic stuff, but gets his stuff in. Works over the legs of Mahoney for several minutes, eventually leading to a figure four that Mahoney sells like $1,000,000. Mahoney finally gets an advantage and goes back to what what brought him to the dance, including high-risk maneuvers. Misses the top rope leg drop, which a guy who has had his leg worked on for the last several minutes gets nailed with a spin kick there by Cruel. Cruel not wanting to take a backward step. Mahoney eventually hits his nutcracker sweep and then manages to go after a pinning attempt off a big splash, kind of off the ropes. Mahoney comes back with a super kick and actually does put Cruel over at the end of the match. Tries to shake his hand, tries to show respect, and Cruel tries to, ultimately leaving behind the heel tactics. Balls wants to go after the girl, and that's there. Mahoney does end up showing some respect and basically saying this was a quality match. That sort of endorsement from a national level talent is a good thing. Then we move to the next match at the time, which is Little Guido, who was here the month before. Not that that's a big surprise, but Little Guido coming in and facing off against Mikey Whipwreck. Again, the belt, I guess, had been returned to the Xavier as champion due to the heel tactics of the promoter the previous month. Mikey Whipwreck comes out kind of looking a little bloated. At this point, Mikey doing more as a trainer than as a wrestler, or starting to anyway. Mikey takes down Guido, and they have a basic match. Obviously, Mikey with the more unorthodox offense and tries to brawl around a little bit. Actually runs around the arena at a point, goes to the floor, does a bit of brawling. If you're into old school ECW, this might be fun. Although you can tell they're kind of putting in, I don't want to say the bare minimum, but they're putting in a compelling match that isn't going to win any major awards. They go back to brawling on the outside. Guido sends Mikey into the ropes into the barricade on the outside. Continues the brawl. Whippersnapper at a point. Ref goes down on the bump off the whippersnapper. Mikey has him nearly pinned. Mikey gets frustrated because the pin isn't happening because the referee is away. Mikey does a spot where he basically goes and does a blood spot and gets beaten there with the use of a chair by Little Guido as the referee just comes to. Amazingly, this is the only referee that ultimately, they seem to have in the promotion at the time, which to me is goofy. If you have a ref that gets hurt, then what do you do if you've only got one in the building? I could see two, but not one. Then we go to the Baldies, or Angel coming in. Angel of the Baldies coming in, which is weird to see as a singles. Jose Maximo, your Northeastern champion, out here with that. Angel of the Baldies basically dominates the match early with power. Power versus speed is the whole idea. Tries to pull the hair out of the head of Maximo and tries to do everything he possibly can to get an advantage. Babyface is made to look good. Angel's never been a huge guy that I'm, like a major fan of. But meanwhile, the G Street Mafia runs down, tries to interfere on behalf of Angel to get the belt off of Maximo, and that doesn't seem to happen. Sledge comes in and tries to take advantage of this and kind of beats him down there too. Really kind of a non-finish at the point where, you kind of have Angel is I wouldn't say upset, but maybe a little upset over the nature of this taking place in a championship deal, but then there's money being exchanged hands, so the idea is he's been purchased off, bought off, whatever. And so, I mean, that seems to be getting the local talent over at the with the help of such a deal here. Sledge and Maximo probably can go forth and have a decent match going forward, or at least a compelling one from a story perspective. Then we see again the challenge for the heavyweight championship. We go back to Low Ki challenging um, his adversary here in terms of that. And then there's a tag match where they agree to team up against the heels for a minute, and Sledge and his tag team partner, which of course ends up being um, Bobby G and Sledge. Bobby G, of course, the manager, facing off against Low Ki and Xavier. Obviously, this is intended to kind of bring some issues there. Low Ki made to look strong, pounds on Sledge a bit. What I don't like about the pacing of this show is that matches are kind of rushed through at times. Um, you know, bridging there and all that is there. And then you see kind of the Northern Light suplex followed by a vertical suplex by Xavier. Xavier, of course, being the champion, the guy who really, why they put him in two matches. I guess from a storyline perspective, the idea that the heels run in and try to make it a deal is kind of a thing. Bobby G comes in, weak shots. Obviously, as a manager, making him look weak isn't that big a deal, but still, cinches up on a reverse chin lock and then manages some choking and all that is. And then Xavier comes in and they do the same bit with him. It looks weaker than I think they want it to look coming out of that. Some backstage promos hyping for future things post that match, and basically basically the heels saying they're going to be in control, they're going to dominate, whatever have you. It's the promos at this point look weak. I know what they're trying to go for. They're going for an ECW vibe, but it doesn't really look that great. Challenges of the girlfriend of Chris Chetty. Chetty Enduring is up next here. Girlfriend is basically making fun of, the women in the crowd. I don't know. At this point, nearly 2.5 hours into the show, do you really need the extra mic work? Doesn't really make sense there. Doring looks good. He comes in, does a short match with his former partner. Lots of he taking advantage, kicks him in the groin, that sort of thing. Chetty and Doring had been tag partners in ECW for a while, so they did go around the indies for a good bit, having mid-level matches. Chetty does the takedown and kind of gets a leg lock on. Match itself is fine, although a bit clunky. I know that they weren't that far out of practice, but it just seems like they were trying to take advantage of the ECW fallback. At this point, ECW still hadn't had their final pay-per-view. Well, maybe they had. They had one promoted for March that never happens. Woman distracts the referee, basically using her body as a distraction. Low blow and roll up by Chetty, eventually leading to a near fall there. Woman tries to get the advantage. Chetty with a bunch of big kicks on Doring, getting an advantage. Hard to tell which, from the way the match is booked and played out, where they wanted to go babyface heel wise, but maybe they don't care. Maybe it's just the ECW Nostalgia Act is enough for them at this point. Don't really know. It's hard to say because it's not really well defined. Amityville Horror, DVD driver type maneuver leading there, and the sit out win for Chetty. looks to be almost inevitable, but the referee is kind of out of position, or also the woman distracts again. And that's kind of an interesting run there. The attempted slide off. Doring gets the double pump handle DDT and a victory for himself with, or what looks to be. I mean, the back and forth on the match, too, the reason I keep saying victory is because the near falls look convincing enough, but it's also the show itself, by this point, is dragging, and they've still got 2 or 3 other matches to go. 2.5 hours into a 3+ hour show here. And that's with editing, so by the time you take the music out and all that, you get the victory. And they do the sit-down seated pin, and then you do see Doring get the victory. Anyway, moving on to the next in the marathon show of shows here. We see Joel Maximo and Amazing Red versus the Boogie Knights, Danny Drake and Mike Tobin. The tease of them breaking up, I guess, doesn't apply to this show or something. Anyway, this is relatively short by comparison to the rest of things. Doring is out there thanking everyone for attending the show and saying how wonderful he is and all of that. Then we see the, USA Pro Tag Champs coming out and challenging just about anybody. Red and Maximo make their way out, and, Red having already performed in the night doesn't really make sense to me. Maximo already having performed in the night really doesn't make sense to me. Seems like just carrying a show on for the sake of carrying it on. They get a reasonably quick victory, like literally less than 2 or 3 minutes. And then we go to lots of basic high spots, roll them up really quick and whatever have you. Then we go to the main event of the night, which is Xavier and Loki, even though they have teamed earlier in the night before. Loki doesn't even get his jacket off before Xavier starts to go at him. And this is a championship match, as we want to learn what seems like forever ago when the show started. The ICW World title on the line. Don't know why an independent needs a world title, but hey, lots of independents did it at the time. Loki finally gets his jacket off after a few strikes and tries to do a modified 619, but instead almost dives over the top rope. Pretty amazing exchange. Head scissors take over Loki. Loki manages to stay in control for a bit, and a kick right beside the ear of his adversary, and the crowd certainly behind Loki. Xavier had been, I guess, promised to fight him before in previous incarnations and months, and hard shots a couple of times there by Xavier, and he goes right after his adversary, hits him in the corner with a hard forearm, and then takes him over, butterfly suplex. One thing I do like about both of these guys, they do go for regular pins and also make it look like they're actually caring about winning the contest in the long and short run of it. Low-key eventually hits a tope dive to the outside a few minutes later, nearly knocking himself and the cameraman unconscious, it appears. And Loki manages to fight out from underneath all of that. Loki brings the man back in, hits several of his strong style kicks, and they certainly are strong, and they do have a unique style to them. Needless to say, Xavier does an amazing job of selling. If you go out of your way, other than the Cruel and Mahoney match, this match, for the sake of how it's put together, probably worth going out of your way to see. Xavier does make his way back to his feet and manages body slams and doesn't take too many risks, but does go to the top rope upon occasion just to get an extra added advantage, and also because he does have that experience level of, kind of going into it. Rolling capo kick, though, by Loki. Doesn't get all he wants on it, gets enough, and there's a separation point. Key manages to hang with him a little sequence. Interesting. Almost going for a dragon suplex, but Xavier manages to duck down and nearly stay down. But instead, Low Ki manages to block a neck breaker and then put on Dragon Sleeper. Um, Official from the company up on the apron, causing distractions. Low Ki does not get the victory. He goes after the heel, and again, distractions as it were. Xavier is on the canvas and less than happy with all that's coming in there, and kind of a distracted double down into a almost no contest level position. Needless to say, we continue the brawl through, we continue the roll through and the go through there. And again, more cheating, more consternation, and the referee trying to create some level of go through. The Low Ki continues to go after him. The referee looks completely exhausted by this point, which is why another reason not to have only one referee on shows like this. Then you see Xavier going right at his opponent here after a stun gun style maneuver. 2 count. Low Ki comes out the back door at the last minute. Then we, again, good exchange, and Xavier tries to gain an advantage, side forearm to the side of the head, and ultimately, Low Ki tries to get I guess you'd say a suplex off the top rope, but a German suplex into a roll through, and a secondary German by Xavier into a roll through and a bridge, and Low Ki is able to come out the back door of that. The last, I'd say, 3 or 4 minutes of this are really good in the sense of the exhaustion, but the fighting spirit aspect is brought forward by both guys, worth checking out for that purpose. Low Ki again manages to get run into the turnbuckle, but doesn't exactly detour himself. Neckbreaker attempted, and again the distraction from the outside, and ultimately, Low Ki is kiboshed by interference from various members of the heel faction. Xavier manages to pull his man up at the last possible minute, hits the neckbreaker he was trying to hit earlier, but Low Ki manages to go and struggle out and hit the key crusher in a last-ditch effort, and key crusher, kind of that I guess you'd say elevated suplex style maneuver. Again, the official comes, or the company guy comes in, tries to interfere, grabs the belt, knocks Xavier out almost knocks him out in process. Xavier, though, referee still there. Xavier basically saying what's going on with all this mess, and Xavier rolls out as the champion, but not exactly in terribly convincing fashion. The cheating and all of that coming into play here, and without a doubt, again, still convoluted booking. Not a bad show overall, but the booking definitely needs some help. Worth watching a few matches, and I will continue to cover them just because it's interesting to me. In any event, keep your feet on the ground, your mind in the moment. Till next time, everybody.